All right, thank you. This is Scott Rogers. I call to order the Appropriations Committee meeting Thursday, February 13th. The open meeting of the Northborough Appropriations Committee is being conducted in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. All members of the Northborough Appropriations Committee are allowed to participate either in person or remotely. The Act allows Northborough Appropriations Committee to meet in person and remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream or the recording of this meeting may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube via the link listed on the agenda. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation. Unless such participation is required by law, this meeting will feature public comment. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Terry O'Halloran. Here. Halloran, sorry. Jeff Knight. Here. Bob D'Amico. Here. Tim Kalin. Here. George will not be with us tonight. Staff, we have Stephanie Bacon.
Hello.
And Jason Little. Excellent. First order of business on the agenda is any public comment. Anybody in the room or online wishes to make a comment or have as a question, please raise your hand, virtually or physically. Jason, can you switch to that participants panel? Oh, that's on the bid itself. Attendees panel, thanks. I just can't see if there's a. I don't think there's a hand raised. We'd probably get a flag if there was.
Mouse on Stephanie's desk.
Oh, sorry.
That's one. Thank you there. I think we're in good shape. All right, we're in good shape there.
And let her in?
No, just it'd be a hand raise if there was something to say from a virtual participant. I don't see a hand raise. And then no public comment. Thanks for that. First order of business would have been the approval of the meeting minutes. We don't have those prepared yet, so we'll pass over that agenda item. So first up, we have Planning Director Lori Connors, and we're going to do it with John Campbell at the same time for the CPC.
Mr. Chairman, just with respect to passing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Terry, yes.
Just respect to passing over the minutes. You know, we received the package and we did not receive the minutes, and the package for the meeting tonight was distributed 1 hour before the meeting time. I find it very difficult to review all of the material within 1 hour and have an opportunity to formulate questions, et cetera. Happy to listen to the presentations tonight, but I think that as a general rule, we should be able to expect a package to review well in advance of the meeting so we can properly formulate questions, analysis, and provide some value to these presentations. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things I do want to do towards the end of the evening here is I have a list of all the departments and budgets, and I want to make sure that we've got each of those allocated to a time slot, whether we're going to need to have a presentation on them or not, and then look to see when we'd have each of the corresponding budget report sections and tables of budgets, and just make sure we have those. And so we'll talk about that as we get towards the end of the evening. Thank you, Terry.
Yep.
It's the chair.
Yep.
To Terry's point, which is a fair point, hopefully we'll have the ability to retrospectively go back if there are concerns after hearing the presentations and given a chance to review things retrospectively. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity to bring back anybody where there's remaining questions or answer those questions
Fair
that
enough.
get
Thank you.
formulated
I
afterwards.
appreciate that. Thank you. Yes, I agree.
Excellent. Okay, good. Lori, let me turn it over to you then. Thanks.
I'm going to turn it over
John
to
first.
John to start.
Hand off. Good evening, John Campbell with the Community Preservation Committee, and thank you for giving us some time to go over our recommendations for this year. I do have a handout I'd like to hand around, if you don't mind passing those down.
Oh,
You guys have a packet.
Those are included in the packet already, John.
Yeah, I've
so-
seen that. Oh, they are. I thought. Yeah. Give it back. I can put the back in my printer. What I handed around is kind of a preview of part of what we will present at town meeting that we like to do each year to show where our town CPA funds have been going historically. And what you note in the pie chart immediately is that the majority of our CPA fund projects have gone toward recreation and open space preservation, which is not a bad thing. The town approved the CPA largely on the opportunity for open space preservation, so we've used it very well there. But the legislation and the CPA is designed to serve three core needs, that being open space and recreation, as well as affordable housing creation and historical property preservation. We are underserving the affordable housing component, as you can see in the chart, and that's why we're pleased this year to bring forth an article for the town to consider, which would create 8 new affordable housing units at the Village Drive complex, which is already managed by Northborough's Housing Authority. So it's a very well put together application, cost effective because the apartments will be created with modular construction technique, which has been popular and proven for this kind of apartment creation. The project originally had a request of $800,000 to the CPC, and we voted to give it a contingency of 10% for $880,000 because we felt like our budget and reserves could afford it. We're working from a total budget of $840,000 expected new revenue for FY '26, as well as reserves of $870,000. So with that said, we felt like we could well afford this request as well as the other applications that came before us. Do you have any questions regarding the affordable housing project? So one of us could address them.
Yeah, and that's if we're looking at, in our package, this memo, there's a list of, it's probably just before the pie chart.
One question is the 840,000 of projected new revenue, what's the source of that revenue?
It consists of the town's 1.5% property surcharge, the expected revenue from that in the fiscal year, plus the projected state match amount. So we've been getting a state match every year. On average, it's been over 30%. This year, it's probably going to be more in the 15 to 20% range.
Okay, so the 840 that's the 1.5%? Jason, you can answer.
No, that's inclusive of the state match as well.
It's about 700.
Oh, and then the 870,
708,000.
that's current reserve.
Right.
Okay, so I'm seeing the two, okay. And, oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm not on microphone, sorry. If we, let's just say we didn't do anything, the 1.5% levy is just for this purpose, is it not? So that would,
Correct.
that would be there regardless.
The surcharge is going to be levied whether
Whether
we
we
appropriate
spent
from
the
that
money
as a
or not.
source or not. But we're required to spend 10% from each category that John has on the.
Okay, thank you.
If we could, as a follow-up, the table that we have that shows the, kind of the annual revenue state match, where it calculates that average state match, I think that's a
Oh, yeah,
great trend. If you could
I
pass
know
that
that's
out
that's
afterwards.
publicly available. I think it was it October that we did the financial update to the CPC. But I can include a link to that.
Yeah, that'd be great, just to.
I have it with me as
read-
well if you had a specific question.
You do, yeah.
I was just thinking,
You just like to see the history of it?
yeah, it's kind of informative to be reminded of that benefit of the state match.
Yeah, Jason nicely puts that together and presents it to our committee in the fall. And we get a sense of where we've been and also how the projected revenues are coming exactly to the question.
Yeah.
So that we know what we're dealing with. And it's also so, as you mentioned, we know what the 10% minimum is. For instance, we're projecting 840,000 new revenue. 10% is 84,000. So in our reviewing of the applications, we have to see, is there one that will meet that minimum? Check it off. If not, we put that in, the minimum of that amount in reserve. So for instance, in some years, in the in the affordable housing category that we're talking about, where we have not had a project and we've had to budget at least that minimum, we put it into the reserve account. There was 270,000 in reserves. 273,000 that was in the affordable housing reserve. So that's contributing to this $880,000 project for the new affordable housing units.
Understood, thank you.
Does the transfer of those reserve funds require town meeting approval, or is it just up to the It does, okay.
Yeah, so I think this paragraph at the end there describes kind of the structure of the warrant article that says so much from new revenues, so much from reserves, right?
Correct. And we actually got to that in reverse. We looked at the total budget of applications that we had. We knew we had the affordable housing reserve amount, and then we figured out which portion could come from new revenue and which portion we could take from the unreserved account. Reminder, the unreserved account is previously unallocated amounts that didn't go to any of the three categories or to the minimums. And also, sometimes the state match ends up in the unreserved account, and not to mention revenue from, from
Yes,
interest or whatever, correct?
So basically, we set a conservative budget, we make an estimate for what the surcharge is gonna be, we make a guess as to what the state match is gonna be. Any revenue that comes in beyond the 840, it's 820 this year, 840 is what we raised the estimate for next year. So anything above 840 that comes into the CPA fund goes into the unreserved fund and would have to be appropriate, similar to free cash.
Very well, so any other questions on that application?
And you've got then some of the site layout on where the new units would be.
Yes, it'll be sited within that complex of existing buildings.
Is there a parking issue? I'm sorry if you were in the middle of the thought. Is there a parking issue with adding 8 units there?
So they do have to go through site plan approval. And let me see, I got the files here in case you're gonna ask me a question about it, so. Find the right one.
Our friends at the library sometimes, I think, get concerned about cars being parked on their lot and people walking across around the fence. So I just wonder if it's gonna exacerbate that situation that's already there.
Yeah, they are showing it looks like a slight expansion of the parking lot in the layout. So, they are planning on including some additional parking spaces. So we've got, let's see, 3, 4, so 7. Oh, that's
Oh, those
already
numbers
existing.
represent the additional spaces, Laurie?
I believe so.
So I can see the existing spots, through the current ones, and then that arm extends with another 6 spaces in kind of the center of the picture. Similar things happen in other areas of the property where we're seeing expanded spots. So it looks like
So
they've,
they are planning 2 parking spaces per unit. So
Total of
16 additional parking spaces.
Okay.
yeah, excellent, thanks.
Is the, excuse me, is the warrant article contingent upon receiving the additional financing from the state for this, is what I read quickly? It's a $2 million project cost, so you're getting some financing from the Mass Executive Office of Housing. Where are we with that? Is that guaranteed? What's the status?
It's my understanding that, I'm not sure if guaranteed is the word, but it's my understanding that it's been committed. I don't believe our warrant article would be contingent on it, but in the event, as with any of these articles, in the event that the project could not be completed, then the money would return to the CPA reserves. But unlike the affordable housing project that they tried to propose 3 years ago, I believe, in which at the last minute before town meeting, the state rescinded its support, saying it didn't have proper estimate. It was an unexpected result. We pulled it back from town meeting, and it didn't go before the voters. This time, there's been excellent collaboration with the state, and I think they're very confident that they're going to get the matching funds.
But it's, if the matching funds weren't there, the project would not go forward.
It's true that what they're asking for from CPA would not fund it entirely, if I can answer it that way.
So what would happen?
If it, as I say, if the town voted these in and we're past town meeting, and for some reason, the project could not go forward within, you know, a reasonable time limit, the funds would return to the CPA reserves, and the project would not go forward.
So construction agreements would not be signed until you have the money from the state.
I would expect that to be the case.
So it is contingent.
Fair enough.
Is there a reason we can't put that in the warrant?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
Okay.
John, I think it's understood that, through the chair, that the payments to the Affordable Housing Corporation are subject to a funding agreement that goes through a public process of the select board authorizing the
But
the
Jason,
funding
due
agreement.
respect, this is not involving NEHC whatsoever. This is all to the Housing Authority. So they aren't even a party to it.
Well, we could put strings on
Oh, you mean
the
if-
appropriation and require a funding agreement be entered
Sure.
into so that the terms of the payments would be defined. And we typically do that with all of our agreements with outside agencies, where we require a funding agreement be entered into whereby the deliverables and the milestones are spelled out in it, where, you know, we wouldn't just be turning over money to another agency or transferring it to somebody without there being some protections or some involvement of the town afterwards.
So the warrant article that I wrote, if you don't mind, it does specify that it would be for the purpose of constructing 8 affordable low-income one-bedroom rental units for veterans, of which 4 will be first-floor handicap-accessible units at 26 Village Drive, with the disbursement and expenditure of said funds to be subject to a Community Preservation Act funding agreement between the town and the Northborough Housing Authority. So that's in the warrant article.
Okay, do I have that?
No, it's just
I
not
can
a part of
share
the
it with you.
package.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
I think I only have one copy here.
That's okay, I don't need it right now, we'll revisit later, thank you.
Yeah, we can follow up with that.
I
Mr.
can also
Chairman,
leave this with you
Thank
when we're done.
Yeah.
if we could return, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So, this is a deal between the town and the housing authority, so the selectmen don't get involved once we go past town meeting and we fund it that way? Is that what I heard?
Correct.
It's true.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Jeff?
Well, before I return to that, so does the state then have influence or control on how the project is managed or how it's completed?
Well, they do, because of course, the housing authority is a quasi-state agency. And so, they have, their oversight is the state. So they're, on that side of things, they will have, control. And then they will also need a comprehensive permit from the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. Well, I wanted to go back to the parking situation because so this is already a problem, and I'm looking at this, and I'm sorry, because I didn't get to see this till I sat down here. I don't see how it's even possible. So I guess if you don't have the information now, what I'd like to know is exactly how many units there will be, and then how many parking spaces there will be, and to make sure there's at least 1.5 spaces per unit. Because again, I think this causes issues for a lot of residents when they try to go to the library. Like I said, it's already a problem, and I think we're just now adding to that problem by sticking a building in the corner. So I think that's an important thing to clear up before we get to the point of actually voting on budget recommendations.
Well, the ZBA will approve that. So that's under ZBA jurisdiction, and they're not able to approve it until a permit. So it has to be fully designed. This is just a concept. So that's not gonna happen before town meeting. So they're not gonna invest the money in engineering unless they know that they have the money to proceed with the project.
Sure, but I think we can, right, I think someone should be able to tell us just by eyeballing it, how many units there are and how many parking spaces there are, and how many there could be. I realize you might not be able to get it drilled down, but what's the point in pursuing something if there's gonna be insufficient parking? Because I believe there is insufficient parking now. So I think if you add 8 units, you're making a problem a lot worse.
Well, like I said, in the concept, they are proposing a new alignment for the parking. So that will enable them to add 16 parking spaces. So the existing parking, I don't know if your picture is as clear as mine, would be reconfigured. So it, right now it's kind of a rectangle, and they're making it more of a, trapezoid. So they're changing the alignment of the parking so that they can accommodate those additional spaces, as well as the alignment of the sidewalks. They're adding spaces where they don't exist, but until it's engineered, it can't be submitted for
Right, so to
official
solve the timing
approval.
issue right now, I guess if we can just confirm that it is going to be the 16 spaces or 20 spaces or however many it is, right? If we can just get a confirmation on that, that will allow us to evaluate and make our recommendation, knowing that it's not going to go through site planning and site approvals
Waste
before
money.
we go.
Yeah.
Yes, the concept that they provided in their application says proposed building, 7 by 50 equals 3,000 square feet, 2 stories, 4 units per floor, 8 total units, 2 spaces per unit. So that's what we're operating under.
There was a
And with
comprehensive
20 spaces indicated on the, am I doing the math right? Yeah.
16 spaces.
But
No, there's 20.
20 if I total the numbers up on the conceptual drawing.
7, 7, 14, yeah, you're right.
So that's
Showing
where
20.
if we, it might be that the minimum is 16, right? The 2 by the 8 units, maybe they're planning for 20. So it's that sort of confirmation that lets us know, gives us enough to go by.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on I think you had some pictures of the, kind of the layouts as well. Okay. Any other questions on the affordable units? Excellent. John, let's go to the next one then.
Certainly, and apologize for being distracted. There was a comprehensive due diligence report provided by the, is that a consultant?
That is a concern,
Boner that
yes.
provided and that was part of the application, if you will. We just got it today, so I was reading it. There is a lengthy discussion about parking, so
Oh, okay.
maybe we can pull that out and forward it to you guys.
Or even if it's posted under the CPC packets and, items under consideration, then we'll just link to it.
Agree to that, so. Fair enough.
Because I think, is that on the CPC page, are the current applications posted?
Correct.
Yeah, so
I'm
the
not certain
materials under
this
there.
document was part of
Not
that
yet, right?
application
Because
at
it
the
just
time.
came in.
Yeah.
So as if that could be added to that collection, then we'll just link to
I think
it.
that's possible. Fair enough. The next article we plan to propose is for adding 200,000 to the Conservation Fund. We have gone to town meeting on multiple previous occasions, and the voters have approved in each case to take CPA money for the purpose of open space preservation and put it in our Conservation Fund, which existed, by the way, before CPA in Northborough. And once in the Conservation Fund, it can be utilized throughout the year when an opportunity for land preservation occurs. And we've successfully put that to use on many of the open spaces that we enjoy in town, such as the Green Street land, which was the old Shunder property, trail creation, adding to conservation spaces up in the Mount Pisgah hiking area. And more recently, at last year's town meeting, use of the Conservation Fund was a significant reason why we were able to acquire the Whitney Street land using CPA funds and reserves without need for any other revenue sources. So, however, we used nearly all of it in that purchase by the town last year. So we felt like it's time to start replenishing the Conservation Fund. And the Open Space Committee recommended this, and the CPC approved it unanimously.
To
Questions on the-
release those funds, once they go into the reserve, what is the requirement?
Sorry, could you repeat?
If town meeting were to approve the transfer into that reserve fund for conservation purposes, what is the mechanism that it gets released? Is there any other controls regarding it?
Yes, when there's a request or a need, Open Space Committee and Conservation Commission must both vote in favor of it.
So the advantage of doing it, of putting it into the Conservation Reserve Fund is that you don't have to go back to town meeting if you have an opportunity for open space.
Correct.
However, it's always going to be for open space and not for any other purposes, for example, an overrun in your housing project or whatever. Is that correct?
Absolutely true. So once it's both voted from CPA and to the Conservation Fund, that amount of funds is designated as must qualify, uses must qualify under CPA open space requirements.
And are there any indications today as to opportunities for open space that you're aware of?
There are a
Purchases.
number of opportunities that the Open Space Committee follows. I happen to serve on that committee, and we have a regular assessing of open space parcels in town. We have a protocol where we try to reach out to landowners and receive input from them. And it's the kind of thing where you can't solicit, if you will, but if you make it known that the town is interested in conserving land when it's available. Our intent is to make landowners comfortable to come to the town and talk about it and see if it makes sense. And then, should there be a parcel of land, we then, the Open Space Committee and ultimately the CPC would judge, does it meet the criteria that we've set up in town? For instance, does it abut existing conservation land? Does it reduce the potential congestion if it were to be developed versus kept as conservation land? Things like that, as opposed to just any piece of land.
And the current balance in the Conservation Fund is zero?
It's about 90,000. It consists of some prior CPA money, if I'm not mistaken, as well as interest revenue or
Well,
investment
one of the benefits, to the chair, one of the benefits of putting money into the conservation fund is it's subject to, you can invest the money as you would with a trust fund. So there's generally investment vehicles that generate funds beyond it generates its own investment income within that fund. So money has accrued there as a result of being invested.
But you can do that in the General Reserve Fund as well, correct?
Well, the general fund's money is.
Well, in the CPC, because you already said that you have unallocated reserves.
Oh, correct, yeah,
It's
the
the same,
CPC
it doesn't need to be, in order to generate an interest income, it doesn't need to be in the Conservation Fund, it could be in the unallocated reserve fund, correct?
Well, true, but when it's reserved here and sits here, it generates money for the conservation fund, for the purposes
I
of the
understand.
conservation
Yep,
fund.
okay.
And Laurie, if I'm correct, if DCR reimburses for the Whitney Street work, that's another 200,000 that would come into the
Correct.
Conservation Fund?
That's correct.
So then we'd be looking like a 490 type balance in the
Sorry,
Conservation Fund.
could you clarify that for
Yeah,
me?
I'll let Lori talk to that.
So, back when 432 Whitney was being considered, so a few months before the purchase went before town meeting, I had reached out to DCR to see if they would be interested in giving us any grant funds to assist with the acquisition. And they are interested. The way it works is instead of a grant, they would purchase the conservation restriction for the sum of $200,000. So that process has been very, very slow. The latest hiccup is that they wanted a professional land survey of the property. If you recall, there was a portion of the land that was purchased for housing, affordable housing purposes. So DCR wanted that lot surveyed out. So that's in process. We didn't have the financing to pay for the survey. So DCR decided to pay for it themselves. So the surveyor went out, I believe, a week ago. So we should be expecting that soon. And from what I understand, that's the last hurdle. And then we can work with town council on the preservation restriction, and then they will hopefully give us $200,000.
Thank you.
On to White Cliffs.
Very good, thank you. Yep. So the next article that we approved to bring to town meeting is what's characterized as White Cliffs design. It's really what we are going to present as phase one of a two-phase project for the next phase of restoration of White Cliffs. The money in this article, $93,940, would be for the engineering services, architectural services, and environmental services to prepare the removal of the additions to White Cliffs that are not historical, particularly the kitchens and so on, that are a drag on the building because they allow in moisture. It prevents the building from being properly protected. And so this would establish what we need to do to remove the additions and button up the building, in essence, restore the original walls of the historic mansion and make it, position it, if you will, for the next phase. We do not project what that next phase is. Obviously, White Cliffs is a hot topic of discussion. There are many opportunities being discussed now, and this is necessary regardless of whether the town maintains ownership and uses it for a purpose in town, or whether the town finds a partner who would buy it and continue the restoration, and so on. But we feel strongly that this amount of work, again, phase one, the architectural work, phase two, that we would bring to town meeting in the following year for the complete removal is really what you would do to stage the property for its next phase of purpose. It's not written into this application, but we intend to present to town meeting that the removal of the additions and the work involved would likely run about $700,000, and that we intend to bring that to town meeting the following year, and that it would be funded by community preservation revenues and reserves, once again, so that there would not be a new burden on any other funding sources from the town.
Just the continuing burden of the CPC itself.
Yeah, Bob?
Yeah, just a quick question on, you mentioned that there was potential partnerships. You've been approached about partnerships into renovations?
We've had some interested parties.
So if you had some interested parties, would they not include phase one, or you have to do phase one to get to this interested party to phase
Yeah,
two?
nobody, let's put it this way, for the town, if the town was going to, under procurement laws, we would have to spend around $17 million in all that needs to be fixed in that building and preserved. If we had a private party come in, it would probably be around 10 million, maybe 12 million. So it would have to be somebody that was very interested in preserving a historic building, and anything we can do as a town to support financial efforts would be appreciated.
Okay.
I'm sure.
So phase one is a necessity to
Definitely.
get to the step?
Yep.
Okay. All right, thanks.
You're welcome.
And the reason we can't tear it all down?
Well, the town voted to preserve it, so that was the town vote last year, right? When was the?
It was 2016?
Oh, well, that was a while ago. So the town voted to preserve the iconic building, so
Town could vote otherwise.
they could, you're right, yep. Yep.
Has anybody looked at plans, different plans, like if you tore it all down, how much would this cost, if you renovate? I mean, is there anything like that in the plan?
Yeah, we do have numbers, we do. I don't have them with me right now. Would probably need to update those numbers, because I think they were from a few years ago, but,
We go back to 2019 in the White Cliffs Building Committee, and.
Okay, that
and
was
that led
the
to
year, yeah.
the one proposal that was offered. I think even under that proposal, CPA funds on the order of 800,000, if I remember
Right,
right.
but,
So we're kind of talking this similar order of magnitude and continued town funding to get it into some sort of
Mm-hmm.
effort whether it's continued town ownership or a partnership, that, and CPA continues to be a good funding source for these types of activities. So the initial purchase and we'll get to the bond payment on that, is at least it's a revenue stream that allows us to allocate amounts each year to continue to preserve the building or maintain the building. Go ahead, Tim.
Has anybody looked at the value of the property without the building? Like it sits on,
Yeah, the assessment for the land.
what,
and-
6 acres of prime real estate right downtown. The land itself has got to be substantially more valuable than the building itself.
Yeah,
I mean, I'd be interested to know what the land's worth and what the tax generating potential of that plot of land would be for residents as we look forward to future years with the fire station, the schools, the new town hall. I mean, that's a lot of potential tax revenue to not explore and understand fully, so when people make a decision on whether they want to continue to invest $100,000 and then an additional $700,000, and then every year it's $100,000, $300,000, like it just continues and continues, and it's money out the door, when that is just, it's valuable real estate that could be used to generate tax revenue, so that when you were talking about 2027 and getting to that point where we hit Prop 2.5, wouldn't it be nice to have that 6 acres of prime real estate going onto the tax rolls instead of it being a continued draw against CPC funds? And I know everybody says, oh, it's CPC funds, but it's still, the money's got to come from somewhere, and ultimately it comes from taxpayers. Taxpayers paid either through property taxes or state taxes. The money isn't free.
Right.
So-
Mike.
So I think that's a question as talks go
Yes.
forward on that. I don't think it's directed. I think, Stephanie, that's more of
Yeah,
an
so
item
there's
to
been
consider.
a lot of generation of interest through, I don't know if you guys have seen, but it started out with the little newspapers like the Community Advocate and the TNG, and then there was the Boston Globe wrote an article on White Cliffs, and then we recently had the
Daily Mail.
Daily Mail.
Mail out of UK, and then we had New York, yeah.
New York Times, New York
So we
Post.
do have a few people that are interested, and I would say they're very serious. But because we have to take part in the procurement laws, the land and building value at over 35,000, so we have to put it out for an RFP. So we're putting our ducks in a row. This will definitely help. It'll show that we as a town are trying to support whoever, and it's millions of dollars. It's millions of dollars. But we're keeping in the back of our mind that vote in 2016, people of the town wanted to preserve this building. And that's what we're keeping in mind. We will hopefully generate revenue as well. That's my goal too.
But I think that,
Selfishly.
Just a second, Jeff, just because Bob
oh, that's
was
right, yeah,
trying to-
go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Now I forgot the question, but anyway, there's a committee. White Cliffs Committee still in existence?
No.
It was disbanded.
It's disbanded, okay, so I would think they would have had a lot of those answers. That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
That was the question.
So I think that there's never been a stronger case of buyer's remorse in this town than White Cliffs. And I think if you had a warrant article to reverse what was done in 2016, it would pass by 80% vote or more. I just believe that. This is a gigantic concrete something chained to our legs. And every year we do anything with it is another year of a bond payment that's not insignificant. And so I think anything we can do, I mean, we really should be looking to get rid of all this other building on Main Street. And, we shouldn't be landlords, we shouldn't be holding on to land, and that is got to be the biggest drag on our local economy that there possibly could be. So again, to me, it's the delay. So even if we're using community preservation funds, we're now talking about 2 more years of bond payments and holding on while this gigantic eyesore just sits there. And again, I think if you were to put it before the town, I think they'd tell you, we don't need to protect it anymore, that no one sees the value in it. I know this is not the issue in front of us right now. This is the use of these community preservation funds, but I think overall the principle of throwing more money at this thing, no matter the source, it's just a bad idea.
Well, that's where I was asking the question, do you have to go through phase one to get to phase two?
I think if you could raise the building and sell the land, you'd get a buyer like this. I'm with Tim on that.
Think so, okay.
Yes. If you got the town to,
That would be a nice
And the
alternative
town- the
option to
town-
look
The
at.
town meeting would approve that.
yeah,
Okay.
in a second, they'd approve that. And it'd be far more fiscally responsible than what we've been doing.
I would, well, I don't know if I'd agree with that, but I'd agree somewhat with that if we didn't have some good things coming forward. And hopefully, if not, you know, yeah, just trying to slowly Band-Aid it, what we have been doing isn't working because I saw it in 2017 and I've seen it recently and it needs a lot of TLC.
Again, I think if the preservation restriction doesn't survive, I think the CPA would have to be made whole for its outlay of money for this property. So it wouldn't necessarily be a windfall for the town to sell it immediately. I mean, because, well, in that, it would be restricted to CPA purposes, the money coming back.
What if you got rid of CPA?
There's provisions for that, but yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know the answer
So
to
yeah,
that.
we're getting into larger
Sorry.
and larger concepts outside of our jurisdiction.
This is getting
Although-
too heavy.
But in terms of overall financial position of the town is under our jurisdiction, right? Is something we
Yeah.
need to stay in. And so you're hearing from committee members, right, is that this continues to be, in the forefront of thought as some of the individual items come through.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next one. Oh, the next one's an easy one. Then it's the bond.
Thank you. In your memo, the next article that we plan to propose is for a Revolutionary War monument in the amount of $10,000, $758. This was brought forth by your Historic District Commission, and its intent is to honor those Northborough residents who participated in the Revolution, and also to put the monument up as part of our nation's 250th celebration next year. The current proposals that the monument would be placed in the area of other existing monuments to the right of the town common area, so that it could be part of that area that honors other war veterans and so on, and that we use on Veterans Day and in other events. That's, would be paid for by new community preservation revenues in the historic restoration and preservation category. Could I answer any questions on it?
That was an easy one, John. Keep going.
Quick.
Okay with war memorials? Yeah, you don't want to go down that path, right? Fair, very wise. Very good. We do need to talk about White Cliffs again at the risk of raising conversation. When the town voted in 2016 to purchase the property, the voters approved bonding for the payment through the use of CPA revenue to pay that bond. And each year, we have gotten town approval to continue to pay the bond from CPA revenues. This would be $166,575, which would represent the 8th bond payment of expected to be 10. And so we are winding down the loan, if you will, on the original purchase through CPA funds. It will come from new revenues in the historic category. Any more questions on White Cliffs? Thank you. And then finally, each year, we propose to the voters that we would like to put money into the CPA administrative account. By law, we are able to ask for up to 5% of the projected new revenue to put into the administrative fund. And this is used for the business of the committee, sometimes legal services, survey services, and so on for the evaluation of a project and things like that. We also pay dues to the Community Preservation Coalition, that is our state guide, if you will, and things such as that. So we're asking for $42,000, which is the maximum 5%. If those funds are not used for any activities by the committee, they go back into the unreserved savings, if you will, and can be applied the following year.
How much did you spend in the current fiscal year?
I don't have the figure at my hands. I know we,
If we spent anything.
yeah, last year we used a bunch for the preparation of the Whitney Street
Whitney
property,
Street.
correct? But
Okay.
not this year.
I can answer that.
Thank you.
Prior year, you closed out $6,113 out of the appropriation, so from, I think it was 80,000, or, sorry, 40,000.
Does it still pay for a portion of staffing, if you will, for meeting, I thought that we were
I believe
paying
if
someone for
somebody
minutes at some
attended,
point, but-
somebody doing minutes, but I think that's been a
Right.
while since I've seen that come through.
What happens to the remaining funds? Does it, when you, in administrative fund, what happens when the fiscal year closes and there's a balance, there's a surplus?
It closes back at, so the distinction between the administrative fund and the other articles that come from CPA is that the administrative fund closes at the end of the year, whereas the rest of the articles survive
Right.
until the purpose is complete and the CPC votes to close them. So every year, that's why we're making this distinction, but it adds to the unreserved fund at the end of the year.
But it remains CPC funds, but it's in the
Correct.
unreserved.
In the unreserved
Okay,
fund.
got it, thank you.
Within the CPC.
So having said that, if the town votes to approve the articles that we're bringing forth in full, we would have $317,000 remaining in our unreserved fund balance, or uncommitted savings account, if you will. And the committee likes to keep some balance there for flexibility in future years. This is very important, as we mentioned before, in the articles we got approved last year. So as a rule, we try to keep a balance there of a reasonable amount. But we felt like, going back to the beginning, that the affordable housing project was extremely important. And so putting a portion of the reserves to that was a good use. Happy to field any other questions, and otherwise, we appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that.
All right. So I have an exciting project coming up. So we're having our first community outreach workshop on the downtown streetscape project, which focuses on Blake Street and the portion of Pierce Street that extends from the intersection with Blake Street to the War Memorial Park and the intersection with Hudson Street. So within that scope of work, we have the Pocket Park at the corner of Blake and Route 20. We have the municipal parking lot associated with that. We have another municipal parking lot that's associated with the War Memorial Park, and we have the War Memorial Park. So also, I provided you with an informational flyer about the project. So right now, the consultant team, the Beta Group, is working on renderings for this community outreach meeting. So there'll be all sorts of pretty pictures showing what their vision is. They've been working very closely with a focus group that consists of staff, certain representatives from certain boards and committees, as well as 2 downtown property owners and a business owner. So, hoping that all of you can come to this community outreach workshop. We do have a warrant article that has been submitted for inclusion on the annual town meeting warrant. I am requesting $1,850,000. I anticipate, of course, we're in the very, very early stages of design, so it's really difficult to pin down a number at this point. But I am estimating that the total project cost will be 2.1 million. Of that, I anticipate that we will be able to secure grant money. We are a complete streets community, and that makes us eligible for non-competitive grant funds of up to $500,000 for a 4-year period of time. I feel fairly confident, unless, of course, things are kind of crazy with the federal government right now. And these funds do come through the federal government. So I felt fairly comfortable that we would be able to secure at least $250,000, possibly more. I am exploring other grants, but I want to be conservative because I don't want to end up being in the red before the project even starts. So I did want to make clear, there has been some discussion about undergrounding the utilities. There are 3 telephone poles within the Blake Street right-of-way that could be made underground. The cost to design the undergrounding is approximately $52,000. And then as part of that process, they would come up with a cost for the undergrounding, which we've been told could be upwards of $1 million. So the focus group has really kind of been struggling with this. Don't want that extra $1 million be the reason why this project fails at town meeting. So they actually asked me to get some feedback from you folks, what you thought about the increase in the project cost to approximately 3.1 million. Whether you think that that would be prudent. One idea we've been kicking around is maybe doing 2 separate articles. So there would be one that would cover the standard costs, and then there would be a separate one that would just cover undergrounding. So we wouldn't necessarily lose the entire project by the desire to underground the utilities. But happy to hear whatever thoughts you might have about that.
Just one question, Lori, under complete streets, 500 grand over that 4-year period, so you think keep that other 250 for a subsequent project?
Yeah, so what I would have to do, because there are certain things that the Complete Streets grant covers. So as the design progresses, I would have to tally up those specific tasks and see what that amount is. So definitely going to be 250. It could possibly be 300,000. If it is 300,000, then I'll ask for 300,000.
Gotcha.
So, like I said, it's just a struggle at this point to come up with an article when we're only at the 25% design phase. We will be much further advanced with the design by the time town meeting rolls around. So I'll be much more comfortable with the dollar amounts at that point.
Okay, and that makes sense. So you total up all the eligible components that would be available they're eligible for the grant, and then,
Correct.
so your 250 is more a placeholder. I was thinking you were, use some now, use some later, but it's use as much as you could.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, Bob?
For me, I mean, okay, I typed the numbers, 2.1 million. It's hard for me to envision what we're getting for 2.1 million, and I assume this meeting's gonna break that down and show us these pictures.
Yes.
But still, you know, some of these pieces are private property, some of these, so they're gonna stand pat. So it's hard, I don't know, it's hard to make a decision right now until this meeting takes place and maybe we get some more feedback on what this is what we're spending on.
Yeah, we were talking about, of course, having that as a discussion item at the community outreach workshop, what people thought at that time. So the reason why 10 and 14 Blake Street are included is because the property owner is represented on our focus group, and they are interested in making their own improvements to the parking lot. Now, depending upon what those improvements are, we may be able to get grant money. We cannot use, of course, taxpayer money to benefit private property owners. So the improvements to their parking lot is not included in the 2.1 million. But it may be part of a grant application that I submit at a later date. So that is why they are appearing in the orange.
No, I get that.
And I think you mentioned financial planning on Tuesday, is that you've got some synergy between the engineering groups, the engineer representing the private owners, and then the engineering team working with us. So there might
Yes.
be some, I'll
Yes,
just
they've
continue.
been working together to ensure that the two projects blend, and that the character of the improvements blend as well.
But you have multiple private properties here, right? It's not just
Now,
one.
there's one property owner, so I've
One
only
property for all those
included the
okay.
municipal parking lot, so that's, of course, town-owned. And then Fatouche Restaurant and the Doggy Den are owned by the same property
Same
owner.
owner, okay.
So all of the other properties that are highlighted here are town.
So there's a lot of coordination for this too, right? You gotta get everybody
There
to
is.
agree.
That's so easy.
Yeah, okay.
No.
Jason, how are you funding this?
Well, it's in the capital plan, but when we get to the next part, the capital plan exceeds the amount of free cash that we have available to pay for it out of present-day resources. So there would be a component still to be determined in terms of this. We have, we're skipping ahead now.
Yeah, we'll get to it.
But an estimate of $3.2 million of free cash to apply to the CIP, and then the CIP in total exceeds that by about 1.6 million. So where the 1.6 million comes from in the free cash, that's not determined yet, if that answers your question.
Yes. So my observation is that we haven't seen the full budget yet. We haven't seen your calculations relative to where we are vis-à-vis the levy limit, et cetera. Let's say it's fair to assume that FY '27, we have a requirement for some fashion of 2.5 override, whether it be operational, whether you do it through your capital projects, whatever. And we're gonna spend $2.1 million on something that doesn't generate revenue? I don't get it.
I think it was projected to be 1.85, but point, doesn't change the.
Well, it also went to 3 million at some point with underground utilities too. So a ballpark number of $2 million that doesn't generate revenue, that we have taxpayers in FY '27 are gonna be asked to do some sort of override provisions for Prop 2.5. We have a fire station that is enormously expensive, rightfully so, I get it, but we had to do it, but it's adding a huge benefit, a huge problem to our to taxpayers. I don't get the whole 3.3 million of capital improvements. We haven't gone through all that. We don't have a full package. There's all the reasons, et cetera. But if you're asking for immediate feedback on it, I find it very hard to figure out how I would be able to support such an expenditure.
Yeah, Jeff?
I would only say that as we go through the capital plan, for me personally, public safety is gonna be number one, schools is gonna be number two. Something like this is to me a luxury item. It's something that it would be very bottom in the priority. So I would say, I can't imagine recommending town meeting do this. It's something we can't afford. I'm not saying downtown's not an eyesore. It is. We're famous for our eyesore downtown. But I would push this, I'd kick this can way down the road, and I'd stop spending money on partners that are helping us plan.
I do have to say that I do slightly disagree with you, because there is certainly evidence in many communities that show that when you make streetscape improvements, you enhance the values of the properties along the area where you've improved. So the value of the abutting buildings goes up when you improve the public realm. And then you also, perfect example, of course, you may have heard me speak that I did the downtown revitalization project in Millbury. And at the time that we first started, the downtown was pretty depressed, and we had a large number of commercial vacancies. And I think if you go to Millbury Center today, you will see a thriving downtown. So there are no vacancies except where property owners want them to be vacant. So there are a couple of bank-owned properties that have been vacant for 20 years, and they remain vacant. But as far as the other storefronts are concerned, they're full, they're thriving. There's cars parked all over the downtown, people walking downtown. So you got to make the investment. The timing, I think, is perfect because right now you have 4 West Main Street largely empty. This proposal completely reconfigures that parking lot. So you don't want to do that when you have, you're relying on that parking lot to serve 4 West Main Street. So if the desire is to sell 4 West Main Street, this project will enhance the value of 4 West Main Street.
I still think it's unaffordable, and I think that the Main Street corridor, I don't know how much it really benefits from doing this along Blake Street. Up to Hudson Street, I don't see it changing the fact that no business is gonna ever survive where that last coffee shop went out of business. We keep making these kind of little Band-Aid moves like those horrendous cookie cutter houses that were supposed to be halfway houses, I guess, that somebody authorized to build over there on Main Street. We got that little shopping center next to the firehouse site that's, you're looking at the back of the building. I mean, there's like almost nothing you could do without eminent domain and raising the entire thing. I don't see any Band-Aid you could do that's gonna make our downtown look anything like a Millbury or a Westboro. I don't think it's possible, even if you had 20 years to do it. I don't think it's possible because you have a lot of private landowners that are in the way. And by doing all these little projects, which I don't know how they came about or who benefited from them, not gonna get into that, but just absolutely horrendous decision-making has left us with a downtown that we have. And this is a ton of money at a time when we don't have any money. We don't have any money. Our taxes are all going up if we do nothing. They're going up already if we do nothing, if we add nothing. And so again, I think people live here for public safety and for schools. That's why families move here, because you're not getting better schools. It's a very safe town, and we're gonna have to keep supporting that. We also have the streets issue that I know Scott talked to us last year about the long-term plan for maintaining our roads, and those are all vital things that we have to do. This parking lot on Blake Street is not one of them.
So there'll be a further opportunity, right, at the community outreach to learn more about what the plans are, see what, and have input and hear from others on that. But I think yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Has there been any discussion or plans on what's going to happen with 4 West Main Street?
Yes, yeah.
I turn it over to the town administrator. I know that there was, it was part of the town hall feasibility study.
Right.
And recently, the building codes have changed. So now we need to make the changes to the building to be whole with the new codes in order to get people in there. So that's what we're working on right now, looking at where we're not compliant anymore.
Does that put I'm sorry, Tim, to interrupt, but does that put our current tenants in any sort of situation?
No, because he doesn't face any egress issues. It's like the stairwell, there's, I had a whole list of them.
Elevator's broken.
The elevator, thank you. Anyone else? But, yeah, so that's what we're doing now. We're looking at new code, how we can make sure that the changes are made so we can get people in.
So there's going to need to be additional investment into that building.
Unless we had a private investor come in and who wanted to put the money into making the code changes, then yes. My thought in what I attempted to do, just to get activity and traction in there, is to rehouse our rec department, because they, of course, deal with programming and people, and so that would bring people in. And in order to do that, we had a quote from an architectural firm. It would take at least $45,000 just for them to like devise a plan to meet the code to get them in. Because I was like, okay, it's rec, kids bouncing balls, you know, we'll paint, we'll throw in a new carpet and, you know, a couple of floors, here we go. Well, that wasn't the case, so.
The reason why I ask is because you mentioned if this were to happen, the possibility that it would increase the value of that building if we were to sell it. Maybe we should determine what we're going to do with the building first before we start making, you know, $2 to $3 million investments in parking around the building. You know, if the plan is to sell the building and we could say, okay, if we do this, we know we're going to recoup X amount of the investment because we're going to sell the building, that makes it much more financially acceptable.
The only thing is, and I'm with you, it's not the downtown that people picture when they, you're right again. It started out a long time ago when we had the opportunity at one point to bury lines and we didn't, and now we can't have nice street lights. And so, yeah, we don't have that downtown that we want. So in order to find a common space where we can have community events, I find it odd too, but that's the only space that has parking next to it. I mean, the war memorial, that looks more of like a common area, but then again, you don't have the parking, so it's like, ugh, it's a double-edged sword.
It's 5 to 6 acres at White Cliffs.
If
You
I
had to
may.
bring that up again.
Just want to make one comment. I spent quite a bit of time in the with the Historical Society archives, looking through historic buildings and historic photos of the downtown. And 100 years ago, Northborough's downtown looked very much like a classic downtown, like Millbury. Those buildings, many of the buildings were destroyed by fire, and what you see is what we have now. So like the Richdale Mart used to be a 3-story, beautiful, very magnificent looking building, and now, you know, we have something other than that. But if that change can happen within a 100-year period of time, then certainly it can change back within a certain period of time. Of course, when you're a planner, you deal in decades. You don't deal in months or even, you know, a decade like normal people. So I say never say never. It may look like this today, but it could be very different in the future.
Any more on that capital item?
No.
Switch gears to budget?
Sure.
I think, to Terry's point, right, we just got the package, so members won't have had a chance to go through either the narrative. Oh, thank you, John. Appreciate your time. Won't have a chance to have gone through the narrative or the tables, but perhaps there's a way to just kind of summarize the statistics in terms of where the increases are and the amounts.
Sure. So for the most part, it's level funded. So the only differences, if you go into the planning board budget, the only differences are, of course, in the salary line items. So those are the standard raises that were negotiated. And then under contractual services, there is a slight increase of $5,000. The $10,000 figure has been in the budget for the last 5 years. And although I appreciate having that money, it certainly has been useful during the period of time I've been here, especially the last 2 years, where I've zeroed out that line item both years. But I'm finding it difficult to do what I need to do with only the $10,000. So I am asking for a slight increase to $15,000. And then also, I don't know if you folks have noticed, the planters around town. That's something that I have done. So I purchased those planters. We plant them every single year. We do two different planting schemes. One in, actually, we did 3 this year. One in the spring, one in the fall, and then one in the winter. The winter one's free. But also there is an interest among my ladies who assist me with the planters to do some additional decorating within the downtown on the common specifically. So I'm asking for $3,000. I had in the past been using other leftover money at the end of the year to pay for the planters and the dirt and the flowers, so I'm just kind of cobbling it out of mileage over here and supplies over there. So Jason had suggested that instead of doing that, I represent it on the budget as the $3,000 there. So those are the only changes in the planning budget. Then when you get to,
Just, Lori, quickly, a question on that. What's an example of the contractual services you would use? Like,
so this year, I have used it for construction oversight. We did have an overage for the dog park. So I ended up using that to pay for engineering services. In the past, like I said, I've used it for planters. Sometimes if I do a lot of grant writing, and sometimes you have to hire a professional to do preliminary work in order to satisfy the submission requirements for a grant. So they may require a concept, so you have to hire an engineer to put that together. And that might be as much as $5,000 to do that. So that's some examples of what
was
I
the,
use it for.
some of the MBTA zoning consulting, was that out of CMRPC, or was that a contractual service?
So we did end up getting a grant
Oh, okay.
for, we did use, for the MBTA. We did have a planning professional assist us with doing the legwork, and we received another technical assistance grant because we had to do an economic feasibility study. Now, if we didn't get that grant, I would have used contractual services to pay for that.
What's kind of our history of lifespan on the planters? I'm so
It
used to
was
saying
like, oh.
planners. Lifespan of the planner, we know. Lifespan of the planters. Yeah, say that a little better.
Well, I purchased the same planters that I used in my prior town, and those planters are still going strong 6 years later.
Okay. So they've got a healthy, it's not a biannual type replacement. They're going
No, so I
5,
have to
6 years out of
replace
them.
the soil.
at the structure, the actual
No,
planter.
the structure lasts for a long time. So every single year I've been adding to the
Mm-hmm.
supply. So I started out with 4, then the next year I did 3 more, and now I'm up to 12. So I could conceivably add a couple of more if I ask very nicely at the DPW, because they water them for me. They add the water. And the flowers end up being, for the 12 planters, I think I spent about $700 last year. So that was just for the spring display, that's the big amount of money, and then we just added a few decorations in the fall and in the winter, so that was probably only $200 each time for those. And then we bought the wreaths, so that was another couple of $100, so it does add up.
Any other questions on 43?
Just a question on, do we still have a town engineer?
No,
That's why you're doing engineering consulting? Or you
Yes.
hire consultants for engineering?
yeah, so the assistant DPW director is an engineer, but we do not have a dedicated town engineer assisting my department anymore.
I didn't, sorry for my ignorance, I know that. Oversight for the dog park, why wasn't that covered for base CPC?
Because we ended up, so the cost estimate that we based our CPC ask on was under. So when we went out to bid, we only were, all of them ended up being quite a bit over the estimate. And then right away, we had a DEP mandated design change. So we ended up being in the red very soon out of the gate. So I ended up having to go to ARPA, ask for $35,000, which they provided, and then I had to use last year's contractual budget and this year's contractual budget to pay for the engineering oversight because we have no town engineer anymore. So we weren't able to provide that service in-house.
Okay, I understand now.
So we had a project that was CPA funded, that we ended up, that taxpayers approved using CPA, and we ended up using regular tax money to pay for it, part of it.
That was my point, yeah.
Okay,
So we also got a $250,000 grant.
understand, but we also, there was, taxpayers didn't, that wasn't,
Because the principle is.
plus
that
we
they-
have, and you have reserves in CPA, I don't.
Yeah, because they always present like there's not gonna be a burden to the taxpayer beyond the 1.5% that's already coming out. So it's always presented that way. But now we just see a situation where that's not the way it turned out. I think
And it was, and it's small, but
Yeah. but-
nonetheless, it's just the
that's
point.
Yeah, that's the point.
It's too bad we couldn't get more ARPA money or something, to.
I did ask for more ARPA money, but I wasn't able to secure it.
But what that does, it's alarming when I think about the almost $1 million housing project. Because, boy, what if we really underestimated that one? Then what? So it's there, right? That it is possible that the taxpayers are gonna get hit with something that they only approve to use CPC funds for.
So I think that's something that as we look going forward into the, operations of the different departments is really be aware of, that intent, right? Is that the funding source for a project is a certain stream. And
Right,
And if
yeah.
we can make sure that the application, it's hard because of the different groups that apply for the CPC projects, because sometimes it's private groups that aren't as adept at estimating. And the CPC themselves are doing their best to validate those estimates. But I think it's be even more aware
Yeah,
with contingencies and everything to make sure that the estimated amounts and what's asked at town meeting is, should cover the
like what
project.
White Cliffs just did, the phase 1 and the phase 2. So to take off the additions, the design of it, and then to actually remove the additions. It's.
No, that's so phasing is a great example, right?
Yes,
You're right, so
yeah.
that you know what your design costs are gonna be in the one cycle, and then the results of the design costs give you the construction costs or demolition costs. And so, examples like that, to the extent possible, right?
Yes,
Because it erodes confidence, I guess that's one way to phrase it, that we
I don't think it's
manage to the
intentional
project, but.
all the time,
Right.
but
May I ask, though, why, because they do have a reserve for the open space, why wasn't that used?
I think it's probably, if I could make a guess, the timing, it would require going back to town meeting and having a town meeting article to appropriate more out of that, whereas I believe the shortfall was discovered. They went to ask for an ARPA request and didn't get the total amount that was needed for that shortfall, from what I understand.
But I thought we were just told that the point of putting it into the open space reserve is that you can then use it.
Or are you talking about the conservation?
Conservation, right, because
I don't-
that's part of that category. The dog park fell into that category. And the whole point of having that reserve is you don't have to go back to town meeting, but it looks like they didn't use it this time for the shortfall.
Okay, so the Conservation Commission controls the Conservation Fund, and those open space funds from the CPA have been transferred into the Conservation Fund. I don't know if this property is conservation land that the dog
So
park is
would that-
on, so it
would
wouldn't
have
be an
been eligible
eligible
in that
use for the
case.
Conservation Commission to apply the funds from the CPA, whereas CPA open space funds could be appropriated for this purpose. Am I explaining that right, Lori?
Right, so
So it would require a town meeting article in a town meeting to access the CPA funds
Okay,
for this.
so this is a recreation use. On
Right.
a land
Not a
that is
conservation
not
use.
conservation land.
okay. So it's in their bucket, that bucket of the minimum, that same bucket but different purpose.
Right.
And so it's not eligible, that source was not eligible. Okay.
Other questions on 2-4-3? You want to take us to,
So when you look at the zoning board of appeals budget, you'll see that the bottom line is identical to what it was last year. When you look at the Conservation Commission budget on the next page, you'll see that there's only a slight increase, and that is due to the salary increase.
and we're continuing to just model that contingent upon the results of labor negotiations, right?
Yeah, I, within Conservation Commission, I don't think there's anything that would be subject to union negotiations within that, but
Oh, okay.
It does include an estimated 2% increase for cost of living adjustments for staff.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
just out of curiosity, refresh me again. Another zoning board of appeals, there's always litigation going on. The legal fees are budgeted elsewhere?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. So we'll discuss that in the uncategorized?
That'll be in the undistributed
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, just wanted to double check, thanks.
And then earthwork board, once again, same thing. The only difference is the salary increase.
I think the rest is narrative.
Yes.
Having trouble separating the pages. Okay, great. So I guess in our off-cycle time, continue to review the details. If there are any follow-up questions, we'll get those. As you think of them, if you want to write them down and send them in, not do the send to all of us, right? But that protocol of send it into Jason. I wouldn't mind if you copied me, so just so I kind of know what that questions are coming in. But if you get them into Jason, then we can work on compiling them and then
All good.
review for the larger membership. Awesome.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. Jason, the next on the agenda was more general, just finance update.
Yeah, so.
Do you want to do something before talking how the capital plan's looking, or?
Yeah, I don't have anything exciting for you tonight. It's simply, I just wanted to share what I presented to the financial planning 2 days ago. This packet. But, again, it's the capital plan, and the discussion here is, in terms of, there will have to be some priorities weighed and some decisions made related to, the Financial Planning Committee had by consensus, not by an official vote or anything, expressed that they would like to avoid incurring debt for financing the projects. So I think they were going to work on prioritizing in terms of their recommendations in the end. And I'm sure the conversations are going to be ongoing in terms of the funding of these projects.
Yeah, and so I think in our package here, you've got the table. Yeah, everybody's got
Yes.
it open there. It's just past this pie chart. And so a preliminary layout in terms of the funding sources that are likely to be. So for example, Lori's talked earlier about the downtown revitalization. So you see the $250,000 into the grant column, and then the balance of that 1.850 being right now in the free cash column. And this is then the framework that financial planning will use for their prioritization and allocation to the funding sources.
Right, and on this page, it says free cash. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, there's an adjustment there that shows the shortfall in free cash and then what would have to be funded with borrowing. And so I was being careful not to say what would be borrowing and what wouldn't be,
Sure.
because that hasn't really been discussed yet.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
But I think what's good is showing, like, typically ambulance replacement taken out of the medical services fees there.
And I assume, Mr. Chairman, that as we go through each of the departments and stuff, there'll be a lot more detail as to the reasons why for. I thought the school department did a decent job of explaining some of theirs in terms, and showed pictures of the Z school stairs and all that type of stuff. But like, when we get to the trucks and the DPW, what it's replacing, how much maintenance has there been on the existing truck, all that kind of good stuff.
Again, I think I shared with you the binder of instructions I had sent out to departments, so we have a pretty lengthy fleet list from each department that will be part of the packets. So the structure of these meetings and the schedule that's been proposed has been to have folks that have large capital requests or are coming before financial planning come to appropriations afterwards, so that the capital piece of their budget requests can be encapsulated there first, and they'll be ready for distribution for this body.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, so I think that the structure that we just went through for planning, right? We covered the main capital item, Lori presented on that, then we covered her budget. Similar structure with the other departments, run down through some of their capital items, and then their overall operating budget is a good structure, good framework there. Any current questions then on, I'd call it a preliminary capital budget? All right, and more to come if you really want fun times, join the financial planning meetings. Those are good, good to see. Okay.
And so, so go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I was going to say, before we start talking about future meetings and determining who else we want to see or talk to, because that's what I was going to go into next.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that February 27th is when the Economic Development Forum got scheduled, so that's on the agenda here for next meeting dates.
That's going to be library is the location?
Library, yeah.
Right.
I believe the time's 6:30, but don't quote me.
We'll look on that, February 27th.
It'll get posted.
I think you're right.
So let's continue through this, the kind of the preliminary meeting schedule in terms of the allocation of folks. So, excuse me, focus on the schools for the March 4th. So, Jason, once again, as soon as you've got a package, or even you've done a couple weeks back, even if it pieces out, if a first section comes in for like K through 8 and Algonquin, post that, and then if we get Assabet, post that, and if I know it means
Yeah.
creating multiple packets, but if you can do
No,
that,
that's not a heavy lift to create multiple packets. It's actually very
that's great.
easy.
And just let us know. And I think that's great for the public too, right? Is that it's not like you're sending something only to us.
Right.
You're posting it under the Appropriations Committee page. So as that package is developed, folks that are interested can see the information
People at
almost
home
as-
can see everything that we're looking at here tonight.
Exactly.
so.
And it almost, immediately at the same time that we're getting it, we're receiving it, right? So if anybody is watching, it's that, you'll always see on the committee page, the upcoming agenda when it's posted, and then the packages as that's prepared. 18th for finance and undistributed, Jason, is what it's looking like.
Yeah, so again, March 18th, it would just, finance department is me, and undistributed expenses would cover debt, employee benefits, town insurance, anything that doesn't fit in one of the other categories would be under the undistributed expenses. We may try to schedule, these just haven't been confirmed yet, the other larger departments. I think Scott from DPW originally had said he would come on March 4th, but, when the superintendent's confirmed, that's probably going to be a longer meeting. So I think he was kind enough to agree to the March 4th. Maybe he'll be available on the 18th, and we can get another one of the departments in on that night. So as we go along, the intent is is to put together the other departments that aren't listed here, get the budget information out from their submissions to you folks, and if you change your mind about wanting to schedule time for them, I think hopefully we'll have some time to do that. But the only Tuesday schedule may not work out in the future, given the short timeline, for the number of Tuesdays there are between now and March 24th.
Right, and so I'm looking, is there availability? So in terms of week-wise, there's room between the 4th and the 18th, but would we have any departments ready to go the week of March 10th?
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, I mean, we could schedule something for a Thursday that week, but I believe the Tuesday is taken
Tuesday is
by
financial
financial
planning.
planning. So
Right.
if you wanted to schedule something for Thursday, I can try to.
I think, given to some of the earlier comments, we've got so much material. I don't think there would be enough,
Tuesdays?
enough Tuesdays. Right? That's what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like we definitely, to get to March 24th, we're looking at weekly. And if that means Thursday to avoid financial planning,
I'll talk to some departments to try to get them
members can
for
do
Thursday.
Thursdays. I think we've got that much work ahead of us that we're going to need that many sessions.
It's
So Jason, if that.
March 13th, I think is the date.
Yeah, so if you look out and slot those in and as much we can, and even that, we go from the 13th to the 18th. There's one more spot till we get to the 24th, right?
When's town meeting?
28th of April.
Yeah, so the goal would be to finalize the recommendations for the report for the joint hearing with the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board, on the 24th, on March 24th. So that would be the goal, so we're trying to back into that date.
So right
Is the
now,
24th, the joint budget hearing, is that
That's by charter, so
that was 7 days before town meeting?
No, that's,
I don't know the
About a
counting back
Month and 4 days.
language exactly, but it's
March 24th was it though, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
our report finalization doesn't need to happen
I
before that joint
believe-
hearing,
Yeah, I believe
correct?
we might have some time to finalize the report for the printer that goes into the town meeting book after that date, but I think we should have our recommendations in place by the 24th.
So looking at the calendar, I don't know when we'd be able to fit police, fire, and DPW.
Well, one of these departments could, or one or two, could potentially present the same night as the March 18th.
And if could move forward into the 13th,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So it almost, it forces, we need a large department ready to go on the 13th. whether that's police, fire, DPW.
Yeah, we can.
Otherwise, we're running out of time,
Right.
right? If
Right.
I'm,
Yeah.
if I'm following the calendar. Okay. So that's the big hitters. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind running through the list and making sure that there's no other departments that we want to hear from or department heads that might be volunteering to present.
Right. I just attended the Council on Aging meeting, and the only thing that's outside of the level service budget, Kendra, the director, would like another full-time staff, lower pay grade, but somebody to be there that's consistent for customer service, because most of her help are from the senior tax program. So they come in, but with all the programming and the phone calls, and she just needs that consistency, and it's not there. So that's everyone, all department heads, I made them aware, we're, aiming for a level service. But she said, we really, really need this, and I know I'm not going to be asked to present, so could you please send my message? And the only other department asking for additional staffing is IT. And I believe he claimed he needed help even last year, or
Yeah, it was one of the discussions that happened at the summit, where people were presenting their ideal needs for their department, and that
Right.
was one of the departments that had expressed additional staffing needs that weren't met in the 25 budget.
right, yeah.
So for the department heads that don't wish to present or don't plan to present, what's a reasonable date where we can have their proposed budgets so we have time to determine whether we want to ask them to come present? And I would say end of February is probably the very latest it should be. But what's a reasonable date where we can expect to see the proposed budgets?
I'm hearing the end of February.
Well, I think that's I mean, my opinion is that's the
we-
latest it should be. The earlier the better.
We do have budget submissions from every department at this point, and we've had at least one meeting with, I don't think we've missed, maybe one. There's one department that we haven't met with yet, but building and inspection services.
Oh, yeah.
But the rest of the departments, we've had at least one meeting with so far. So it's a matter of just cleaning up their budget to be ready for the meeting, so.
And I know Council on Aging, the senior center would like to present, but they knew that you had a lot of the bigger departments you were focusing on, so,
So I'm going to use the framework that's in the general fund summary, tables that we have in like a report. So let's just run down. So under general admin, we have the executive office. That's going to be covered by,
Yeah, or
Finance.
combination of both
Yeah.
of us.
and our target for that is the 18th, March 18th. The next was finance, that's March 18th. MIS/GIS, do you recall the total budget numbers for that, Jason, and what the percent increase is for their FTE?
I have it in my notes.
Yeah, hold on,
And my question is if it's a small percentage and
Yeah,
it's.
so
and a
without the staff
small
member, it
absolute
was,
number.
his request was 2.77%, but
Without-
without the
And
additional staff
Do you have how much it would?
2.7 on what total?
on $870,000.
Okay, so $870,000 and 3% increase, not
The
counting
increase is 24,000.
Okay, thank you.
We added a.
Is
an
that
employee,
s-
I don't know,
Oh, and so another question then to ask
it'd
is,
be a 12% increase if we added an employee.
given that the way that the budget information is coming in with that section out of the budget report where it's got the narrative and the tables, what I'm thinking is, and most of those are prepared, drafted?
The submissions and the numbers are there, it's just the finished product isn't.
So here's the balance, right? What I'm thinking is, let's take a look at, and so in the case of MISGIS, right? Let's take a look at what that is, put that in the package for us to review, and get that in now, so we can take a look, and if we have questions about any of the budget items or the additional staff, then we have time to ask, and then maybe ask David to come and present. So, so let's, in fact, I would say, in general, right, if we can start putting into a packet what those submissions are, then we know we're gonna talk Executive Office and Finance on the 18th. GIS, let's wait to hear whether we need to have them present, but we'll just have a package for them. Is that, so here's kind of the framework I'm gonna lay out as I go through the rest of the list. Town clerk would be covered under 18th?
Yeah, we could put that there.
Okay. There's a section that is advisory boards. Now I can't remember the big ticket items under advisory boards. Do I have my? Jason, you probably don't have
Yeah,
that.
the advisory boards are basically the moderator, which is the same amount every year. Appropriations.
It's a few $100,000 though, right? Where's
Yeah,
my
it's,
table?
$142,000 is the 25 budget for
So I guess as
advisory
you
services,
look at
because
that-
that includes town council into that
Yeah,
category.
yeah. So, you know the summary table I'm talking about, the one that's actually in the calendar and all that as well. So as you go through the lines in that, think where it makes sense to, do we have enough information to put it in a packet for review or not?
Yeah, so
And then,
perhaps we can get police and fire the same night and include the other departments that weren't attending with the public safety.
I guess what I'm saying, like, almost tomorrow, put into a packet the submissions we have. Now, the balance there is you haven't had the opportunity to have some more detailed discussions with some of the department heads that might refine those numbers. So in some ways, we're releasing information too early before it's finalized. But the benefit to the committee is this gives us time to review it.
Yeah, I feel pretty secure with what their wishes are at this point in the game. It's just, I guess, what,
So then that leans more towards the whole draft budget report. All the sections in their current form that allows us to start going through it in terms of material to review as soon as possible. Then the rest of the activity is figuring out who we want to talk to face to face.
and I think a lot of the work is Jason trying to reformat everything, making everything uniform this year, and, so,
And
yeah.
that's what kind of what I say, if the submissions are ready, to the extent like we've seen it already.
Correct.
Health and Human Services was in a
Yeah.
great format, planning was in a great format. So as the other departments achieve that format, that's when
Right,
should go into the
yeah.
packet.
Yeah, full disclosure that
I know it's-
we had a workbook that that followed the instructions that were given out.
Yeah.
The workbook then is turned into that document
Yeah.
by me. So,
Well, and that's where I would ask, that doesn't sound something that, like, the finance director should be doing in terms of reformatting.
Yeah, he knows this.
but it's
If
a
you can
lot-
help him
lot of
on
cutting
that.
and pasting.
Yeah.
Not to, I mean, I can't direct, but
No, I know.
please free him up from formatting
Yeah,
so that we can get a packet that we can review.
yeah.
All right.
Jason,
Poor guy.
Right. Similarly, the meeting minutes.
yeah.
Well, the meeting minutes are
Understood, but I think I'm going to get a little ramped up. Let's get back to administrative staff doing meeting minutes rather than our finance director doing meeting minutes, if we can.
to be fair.
I
Scott,
can't direct you, but
I wasn't intending to do them the entire cycle. I wanted to see what was involved with them before I could.
yeah, but we lost an element of your administrative support, and we're feeling the pain of that lost resource, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
No, we just discussed all this today, I know.
Okay.
We know.
so, going back to the bit, we'll make a decision on MISGIS if we need David to present his FTE case based on what we see submitted. Town clerk, we probably don't need to talk to. The advisory boards are going to be amounts and information that we can probably digest, so the material will be good enough for that. We've talked to planning and conservation. We've scheduled public safety to be determined. We've scheduled public works. Building as significant enough to be separate?
Well,
Is
they're
that a
they're
separate-
within the public safety category.
They're already in the public safety. Okay, thank you.
Is that the day we're gonna have him in? Police and fire?
Yeah, well, I think we'll have the budget ready by that point.
Okay, yep.
Okay. But I think that's a significant set of amount of money in terms of the building.
It's about $280,000.
Oh, okay, not as much as I thought. Okay. Then under community services, we've talked about the senior center. I think it's very likely, you know, if for Kendra to present the case there, I think we probably want to hear that one. What's the current numbers on that before and
I'm sorry,
after an
which-
FTE? For senior center council of aging?
Well, they're in the neighborhood of $313,000 and 25.
But I think, well, let's see what the details are. Let's see what the packet looks like, what the report looks like, and then we can make a decision on whether we need to talk to Kendra face to face. Okay. Library, I think we can review their packet. I've heard library trustees that came in under Jen was victorious. Recreation similarly, I think if we just look at the materials, we can make decision. Veterans is nothing. Cable is interesting, because
Yeah, it is.
understanding the future of cable department would be interesting, but I don't think necessarily talk, but it's be interesting to see what that narrative looks like,
Yeah.
especially planning future goals.
Right.
Under undistributed, Jason, I know you're already looking at what's going to come in terms of debt services and benefits and all that. And then we get the enterprise funds from Public Works, right? Whew. Okay,
Yeah.
so I think you hear us, right?
Oh, no, we
In
hear you.
terms of-
Honestly, I can't say, enough. He has done amazing, and I know you know that, but he's also, he's neat, and he wants everything to look perfect, so I get it.
But
There's a lot going on.
not
Not
his responsibility.
No, I know.
If I was managing
It's
resources.
just, no, I know. We have, Kristen's new, she's the assistant accountant, so she's learning
Yeah,
a lot of the accounting practices and,
Yeah, this isn't, this isn't intentional that I'm holding on to
No, no,
something,
no,
an
no, yeah.
administrative staff, administrative task. But what I was saying is, wanted to understand what was involved when it was said that finance was going to do the minutes and handle the administration. I wanted to know what that entailed before I handed it off to someone else and
Yeah.
and train them. In the meantime, we hired an assistant accountant, which was additional resources for my department in November. We're getting up to speed with training and so forth, so it's not.
Yeah, so that's what I'm
line of
saying,
work
that's where
where
your
you go
focus
into
should
day
be,
one
not
and
meeting minutes, or not formatting
Well,
a budget
true.
report. That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Scott. Cool. But, yeah, but to get to the template, I think I had to work through at least one or two departments first, as an example, so
That makes sense, So yeah,
that
if
was kind of the internal process, and it wasn't set on me doing administrative work forever.
So if that can, now that you've honed that process, hopefully it can be turned over to someone to do the formatting.
I just want to make a motion if we're at new business with respect to this, because I work full-time. And it was the same last year. Every single time someone makes a budget presentation, we get their presentation minutes before the meeting. And we're scrambling, trying to ask questions, and they're going through their slides, and they're rapid fire, and we've never seen it. So I move that the Appropriations Committee establish a standing rule that any committee or department making a budget presentation to the committee must have all materials uploaded 3 business days prior to the meeting or be stricken from the agenda.
That's a motion by Jeff. Does anybody second that?
Second.
Second by Terry. Any discussion?
Could I just add that, I mean, posting the packet and that information, I mean, was what I had been doing, so this meeting tonight would have been fairly short if the planner had been stricken from the agenda, but that's my input, and, you know, point taken, I mean, it's fair that you should have this stuff earlier, but.
And I think a rule, a goal, I mean, you're hearing us, right? We've got to have time. I mean, I watch every single meeting in this town, so I know what's going on, but nobody has that much free time like I do to try to stay aware of everything. And it's overwhelming, right? I mean, it's an entire town, right? And here we are looking across all these departments and these budgets. And so we just need time. Next year, let's start earlier on the budget process if we need to, or let's look at the kind of templates and frameworks and the instructions and workbooks that have been done, just so that,
I think next year, it will be, the templates will already be established from this year and moving forward.
and of course, we've got
smooth.
new administration too, so you're going to
Yeah.
establish some new
Right.
process and procedures. But the town has been around how many years? Creating budgets each of those years. We should have a fairly robust method of updating the information.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a motion on the table. Any further discussion?
I suggest we table the motion, but make it duly noted that we need information sooner rather than later.
And probably there's a Roberts rule about withdrawing a motion or something
Probably.
like that, and probably the person that makes the motion is allowed to withdraw it. Who made it?
Don't let it happen. I mean, it's a waste. To me, time is the most valuable resource we have. You know, my job is a 60-hour-a-week job. Then I come here, you know, we're volunteers. We want to do a good job. I can't ask intelligent questions if I don't have time to review it first. And I can't review it unless it's the weekend or the evening. And so we need days ahead, not hours, not minutes, not even that morning, because I've started my workday, because we meet on weeknights. So I'm willing to withdraw the motion for now based on this message, but it just cannot happen. And I'm also, it's frustrating because last year we said the same thing. Oh, this year, let's start earlier, and we didn't. So it's very frustrating that it's still happening. So I'll withdraw the motion for now.
Okay, thanks, that. Any other business to come before the committee? Excellent.
I move we adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Terry. Seconded by Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 7:54.
All right.